Hello and welcome to our review of factoring to prepare you for the benchmark. We're going to start off with working on one of the tricks that we did to find factors that add up to a specific number. We call it the diamond. And in this case, we want to find the factors of 12, the numbers that multiply to equal 12 that will add up to 8. And some of these numbers become pretty obvious, but if they don't, take a moment to list all possible factors, and then we want to pick the two that will add up to the bottom number here, in this case 8. So if we look at this, we recognize 2 and 6. We'll write those numbers in the diamond. Likewise, over on this problem, we've got equal 12, but now we're trying to add up to 13. That's a 1 and a 12. Now over here, when it's a negative 12, we need to recognize that we're going to use the same values, but one will be negative. And when the number we want is positive, we want the smaller number to be negative. When the number we want to add up to is negative, we want the bigger number to be negative. So we can just put negatives in front of the small numbers, recognize fairly quickly that negative 3 plus 4 is positive 1. Number 8. Now we'll try 18. Once you try that on your own, hit pause, and then you can see if you got it correct. All right, the factors for 18, 1 and 18, 2 and 9, and 3 and 6. In order to be positive, either both are positive, both factors, or both are negative. And since we need to add up to be a negative, negative 3, negative 6 works. For negative 13, we would get a negative if we multiplied one positive and one negative, and we want the sum to equal positive 12. Go ahead and try that, hit pause, and then check to see if you got it right. Okay, the factors of 1 and 13 multiply to 13. To make it negative, we need one of them, the smaller one, to be negative, so we add up to 12. And then last, negative 20 factors that add up to negative 8. Again, one will be positive, one will be negative. You're looking for a difference to be 8. Try this, and then hit pause. Okay, well, 2 times 10 is 20, and their difference is 8. We want the bigger number to be negative so that when it adds up, we get negative 8. All right, let's try some of the factoring we do that is factoring out a monomial. It's actually a little bit easier than the diamond work that we're going to do later, but we don't spend quite as much time on it, so it might take a while to remember it. What we're going to do is look for factors of the coefficient and factors of the variable. So what are the factors for 4 and for 2 that are common? The number 2. And then for the d, we want to get the lowest exponent that goes into both of them. In this case, it would be a d squared. So since d squared goes into 4d squared, we just need to know what number you'd multiply by to turn 2d squared back into 4d squared. And that's a 2. If you do the distribute there, you'd have 2d squared times 2, that's 4d squared. Bring down the minus or bring over the minus. Now 2d squared times what is d to the 4th? Well, we're missing some exponents, so we just try d squared. If you distribute that in, you'll get 2d squared times d squared is a 2d to the 4th. Once you try this one, see if you can get the factors of the numbers, the coefficients, and then the lowest degree for the variable. All right, by looking at this, the 6 and the 9, the greatest common factor is a 3. And for the a, the lowest exponent that goes into both of them, or the highest exponent, I should say, is a squared. That leaves us with what times 3a squared is 6a squared. It's a 2. And then what times 3a squared gets us our 9a to the 5th. That'll be 3a to the 3rd. And you should check your work by distributing. So this will be factoring out a monomial. We're going to move on to some factoring by grouping. Getting back to the diamond here, these are the easier version because a is just 1. The a is the number in front of the squared term. The b is the number in front of the linear. And then the constant on the end we call c. So if we did a times c, that'll add up to the b. A is, in this case, 1. So 1 times 8 is 8. We need them to add up to a 6. If you want to list the factors, you can, but it comes pretty quickly that it's a 2 and a 4. I'm going to do this one factoring by grouping and then show you a shortcut. The shortcut only works when A is 1, but this method, factoring by grouping, always works. With a little box underneath the two sets of factors, we need to find the greatest common factor. In this case, you always get a variable out of the first two, leaving d plus 2. Bring down the plus, factor out of 4. You're left with d plus 2. And then what you notice is a common binomial is a binomial because there's two terms that can't be combined. And we simply factor that out, getting d plus 2 times what's left, d plus 4. And if you want, and you should, you can square this or multiply it out and verify that you've done the math correctly. D times d, d squared, d times 4 is 4d plus 2d for the outer and the inner, the middle terms. That adds up to 6d, and then last times last, 2 times 4 is 8, and that should match up with what we started with, and it does. So that's the long way to do it. To show you the short way, and I'll continue this way with these when A is 1 version, all we have to do is find the factors, in this case the factors of 8, the 2 and the 4, and we can write d plus 2, d plus 4. Now that'll work every time when A is 1. It will not work when A is not 1, and that'll happen in a couple of slides here. Okay, putting that into practice then, our negative 18 and our negative 7, the factors that have a difference of 7 are 2 and 9. We want the bigger number to be negative. We can jump right to x plus 2, x minus 9. Checking our work, we'd get x squared plus 9x, minus 9x plus 2x. That gives us a negative 7x. And then 2 times negative 9 is a negative 18. Try this one and then hit play. See if you did it right. Okay. Negative 10 and 9, the factors with a difference of 9 because the a times c is negative, is 1 and 10. We want the smaller number to be negative so that we have a positive. Our answer is b minus 1, b plus 10. Try this one and then hit play to see if you got it right. Okay, 16 and negative 10. The factors there are going to be 2 and 8. These are going to have to add up to 10. So I want two numbers that add. There are other factors that add differently, but I want 2 and 8. And I want them both to be negative since they have to add up to be negative. So my answer is a minus 2, a minus 8. Foil that out and you'll see it's correct. Now this is a little trickier. Now my leading coefficient is a 2. I'm going to do 2 times 3 to get 6. That's our a times c, and it has to somehow add up to 7, and this is going to turn into our factoring by grouping. Well, the factors of, and you'll notice this, whenever you multiply and then add the same numbers, if the same numbers add up to a bigger number, that typically wouldn't happen when you multiply, you must be using the 1 and the 6. So, something to pay attention to. It's initially odd for some students to see a number that multiplies, or two numbers that multiply, but then add to be bigger. So in this case, a typical mistake kids would make is they just write x plus 1, x plus 6, and that's not going to work because first off, we don't have x times x, and 1 times 6 doesn't equal 3. So let me show you the correct way with factoring by grouping, and this will work every time. We rewrite 2x squared, and then the 7x becomes a 1x plus 6x, and then bring down the 3. So we haven't changed the values here in total, but we've just split up the 7. Now we can split up the first two and do some factoring, and the last two. They both have an x in the front, leaving 2x plus 1. On the back, we have a 3, leaving 2x plus 1. And as confirmation, we see the same binomial here. We can factor that out. And then what's left is the x plus 3. If you FOIL this out to check, 2x times x is 2x squared. Then 2x times 3 is 3x. 1 times x is 1x. Sorry, 2x times 3 is 6x. 1 times x is 1x. 6 plus 1 is 7x. And then to end it with 1 times 3 is our 3. All right. Try this one. Remember, it's a times c. And then see if you can do the factoring by grouping. All right. I get negative 24 and 2. Factors of negative 24, or factors of 24 with a difference of 2. 4 and 6. I want the bigger number positive, smaller number negative. So now let's rewrite. And factor in the front and on the back. Here we always get an x, and in this case that's all we get, leaving a 3x minus 4. Bring down the plus. The 6 and the 8 are even numbers. The biggest factor we can get out of there is a 2, leaving 3x minus 4. And again, 3x minus 4 shows up twice, so we can factor that out. And there's our answer. This will be the last one, and then you should be ready for the benchmark. Go ahead and try it, see how it goes, and then we'll check the answer. Okay, I got a 10 and a negative 7. The factors of 10 that add up, because there 10 was positive, to equal 7 are 2 and 5. They have to both be negative, so they add up to be negative. And now we'll rewrite. We have 2c squared minus 2c. And not mentioned earlier, but you can flip the order of these, and you'll get the same answer in the end. I could have written minus 5c minus 2c. Maybe I'll do that after I'm done here. Okay, this one has a 2 and a c to factor out, leaving c minus 1. Bring down the minus. And here's an important thing to notice. When you have a negative, you have to factor out, when there's a minus in between, you have to factor out a negative 5 in this case. Well, when I factor a negative 5 out, that first term is easy. Negative 5 times c is negative 5c. But this plus you're going to want to put there needs to now be a minus, so that when you multiply negative 5 times negative something, you get positive 5. And in this case, it's a plus 1 or minus 1. All right, and the confirmation is that we see the same binomial. We can factor that binomial out, leaving 2c minus 5. And if we FOIL that out, we'd get the same answer as we started. Let me quickly show you that the order that I write these in won't matter. So I'm going to rewrite this one where I have 2c squared minus 5c minus 2c plus 5. And now I only have a c in the front, leaving 2c minus 5. Bring down the minus. And I have no factors for 2c and 5, so I just put a 1 there, leaving 2c. Now you want to put a plus here, but it's not going to be a plus. It has to be a minus, so that when we multiply negative times a negative, we get our positive 5. And now, notice in this case, we get a common factor of 2c minus 5, leaving c minus 1. All right. Here's another one you can try, and then you should be ready. Give this one a try. The answer, I'll go through it quickly, and then we'll see you in class. Negative 45 for 3 times negative 15, a negative 4. 45 comes about with a 9 and a 5, difference of 4, and I want the 9 to be negative. 3x squared minus 9x plus 5x minus 15. Factor out of 3x, leaving x minus 3. Factor out of 5, leaves x minus 3. So we get x minus 3 times 3x plus 5. And the order that you put these in won't matter. When you multiply, you'll get the same trinomial. Great. Hope it goes well. Look forward to seeing you in class.